Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradhayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tvashe Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudhirayet Nashtaprayeshu Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. In today's class, we're going to start looking at Srila Prabhupada's purports, the purports that we had missed from text 17 up through to text 29. And then we will cover verses 30 to 34 along with Srila Prabhupada's purports and commence the first verse of chapter 3. We will continue our discussion of chapter 3 from next week. So that's the portion that we will aim to complete today. From text 16, sorry. So what we'll do is, because we've read these verses, I would just request if someone can read the translation starting from text 16, and we'll cover elements of Srila Prabhupada's purport. Would someone like to read the text with the translation for text number 16?
O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Can anybody summarize the salient phrases of this verse and how it supports this translation?
In your class, you spoke about the Mahat Sevaya and you spoke about the Punya Tirtha Nishevanat, the holy places.
Okay.
And Susruso, that was also the other thing.
Okay. So the key phrases here were Shushusho, which means an eagerness to hear. Prabhupada translates it as one who's engaged in hearing. Shraddhadhanasya, one with great respect and faith. Here Prabhupada says with care and attention. Mahat Sevaya was the other key phrase. Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. So these were the four key phrases of this verse. So Prabhupada in the beginning begins by looking at the distinction between devas and asuras to describe the delineation between those who have that sense of faith and respect towards the Lord and those who are averse to him. So Prabhupada is introducing this topic. He says, the conditioned life of a living entity is caused by his revolting against the Lord. There are men called Deva, or godly living beings, and there are men called Asuras, or demons, or against the authority of the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, a vivid description of the asuras is given, in which it is said that the asuras are put into lower and lower states of ignorance, life after life, and so sink to the lower animal forms and have no information of the absolute truth. The asuras are gradually rectified to God consciousness by the mercy of the Lord's liberated servitors. So that's Prabhupada here is referring to Mahat Sevaya and Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. By the mercy of the Lord's liberated servitors in different countries according to the supreme will. Often, sometimes people say, why is your religion so sectarian? It's an Indian-based religion, or it is a religion that is principally spoken in the Sanskrit language. Prabhupada's point here is quite different. Krishna's desire to reform individuals of every different country are present. And according to the consciousness and the need of that particular time, place, and people, Krishna sends his representatives, or he comes himself, in order to elevate the consciousness of individuals in any country, in different places, sometimes in the higher planetary systems, sometimes sometimes on Earth, on occasion in the lower planetary systems, like with Vamandev. And he also comes in different species of life. And particularly when we talk about our current understanding of geography, so Krishna, in many of his pastime places, do take place in India, because Prabhupada explained that India is like the embassy of the spiritual world on Bhumandala. But nonetheless, Krishna has sent his representatives to other places around the world also. Personalities such as Jesus Christ or other great personalities in every tradition who have spoken of the need to love God, in every tradition, whether it's Islam, Judaism, Christianity, they all speak in its essential message the same principal idea. And you have great personalities who have descended in these traditions to awaken the consciousness of living entities, and have themselves shown a very high level of elevation in God consciousness. So Prabhupada says, by the Lord's liberated servitors in different countries according to the supreme will. Such devotees of God are very confidential associates of the Lord, and when they come to save human society from the dangers of godlessness, they're known as powerful incarnations of the Lord, or sons of the Lord, as servants of the Lord, or as associates of the Lord. But none of them falsely claim to be the Lord themselves. And actually, there are really, really inspiring personalities in this category. If you look at, and we can quote many, but one that always strikes my mind is St. Patrick. Those who are familiar with Ireland, their most prominent and most important day is called St. Patrick's Day. So St. Patrick, when he was a young boy, and I don't remember the exact age, perhaps he was 9 or 10 years old, he was abducted from England and taken to Ireland. He later escaped, went back to England, but he really wanted to go back and share God consciousness with people in Ireland. He went back to Ireland. Now, in Ireland at the time, you had individuals who were more like tantric people, or people who had black magic, and there was extremely violent opposition. St. Patrick, on his own, he had faith only in the message of Jesus Christ. He went in and he preached. By the virtue of his preaching, by his recitation of the names of Christ, every obstacle that was put in his way, including spells of black magic, were removed. And all of Ireland, even up to today, is Catholic in its tradition. But you have personalities who, holding Krishna within their heart in different names, according to different traditions, they have gone and done extremely extraordinary and wonderful things. There's another personality, and the name always escapes me, but he was a Catholic priest at the time of the Nazi World War. He was somebody who used to shelter Jewish people within his own church. When the Nazi found out about this, they sent him to Auschwitz, which is a German prison camp. one of the notorious prison camps. He was in one of the barracks, and they had a rule. If anybody tried to escape those barracks, they would capture these individuals. They would take all of the prisoners and shoot randomly any 10 of them. Actually, it was not shooting them. They would starve them to death. They would just be locked up in a room, and as long as they took to die, they would be held there. Now, this particular personality, and I'll get the name in a minute, but this particular personality was not one of the 10 chosen in one of these instances. But seeing the fear of one of the 10 who was chosen, he asked the German SS guard to swap that particularly scared individual with himself. And so they swapped. He sat in a room with these 9 other individuals. He coached them to approach death. They were starving. They were not allowed water. They were just waiting, no bathroom facilities. They were just waiting for their death. He assisted them and basically held them until each of them passed away. 2 weeks later, when German SS soldiers went in, he was the only one alive. And he was just either he was holding his prayer beads or he was praying on his hands. And he was sitting there, no anger, a deep feeling of humility. He expressed gratitude towards the SS prison guards. They needed the room, and so they took him out and shot him. But even up to the last minute, he displayed qualities of tolerance, humility, and sweet speech beyond any capacity of the mind. You have such individuals and personalities who exist in different traditions. And actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in one of his commentaries, says, you can know the transcendental nature of Krishna consciousness by these 3 qualities: humility, tolerance, and sweet speech, beyond anything that the mind is capable of. I mean, everybody has a tolerance limit, but when you push somebody to an extreme position materially, you can think of Haridas Thakur, Jesus Christ, Prahlad Maharaj. You can think of these personalities. When they've been pushed to the extreme limit and still they display these qualities of humility, tolerance, and sweet speech, one understands that they're in touch with transcendence and not just on the material platform. So such personalities exist everywhere. And Prabhupada says that when you see such genuine God consciousness, they are to be seen as the sons of the Lord, as servants of the Lord, or as associates of the Lord. One should be able to recognize these transcendental attributes, regardless of the name, the dress, or the particular practices associated with the tradition. So Prabhupada says, but none of them falsely claim to be God themselves. This is a blasphemy declared by the Asuras, and the demoniac followers of such Asuras also accept pretenders as God or his incarnation. The servants of God, so Prabhupada is continuing on this point, are to be respected as God by the devotees who actually want to go back to Godhead. Such servants of God are called Mahatmas or Tirthas, meaning that they are themselves sacred places of pilgrimage, and they preach according to particular time and place. The servants of God urge people to become devotees of the Lord. They never tolerate being called God. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was God himself according to the indication of the revealed scriptures, but he played the part of a devotee. People who knew him to be God addressed him as God, but he used to block his ears with his hands and chant the name of Lord Vishnu. He strongly protested against being called God, although undoubtedly he was God himself. The Lord behaves so to warn us against unscrupulous men who take pleasure in being addressed as God. There's actually a fellow who has an ashram in Vrindavan. You will notice it whenever you type, place on Google. You type in places to visit in Vrindavan. I think his mandir is called the Prema Mandir. So this fellow claims to be an incarnation of Lord Chaitanya, or Krishna, and most of his the residents of the ashram are ladies. And so when you see such a warping or such a misrepresentation of Krishna's teachings. When you see this, you know that this is not a devotee of the Lord. You know that this is not a process that needs to be followed. But when somebody genuinely presents themselves to be a servant of Krishna and teaches people by their own example to serve and love Krishna, that person is called a tirtha, an associate of the Lord, or a devotee of the Lord. And serving such Vaishnavas allows one to acquire the beginning of faith and eagerness to approach Krishna himself. I've got a question here. Why is it that Krishna goes through his devotees in order to spread Krishna consciousness? Why doesn't he do it himself? He does, but as a general rule, Krishna does not give bhakti himself. That's his own statement. To Arjuna, when he was speaking, the commentary says that, "O Arjuna, it is my rule that devotion comes through my devotees, but for you, I'm breaking that rule, and I'm giving you the qualification to be a pure devotee. So, man mana bhava mat bhakto, and sarva dharman parityaja, follow this instruction." So that's Krishna's statement. But why does Krishna go through his devotees?
Because Krishna wants his devotees to take the credit
Okay,
of spreading the message.
yes, that is
Devotees are merciful and compassionate,
so.
so they can distribute. They will, due to their compassionate nature and merciful nature, they'll easily give the devotion.
That is also true. Krishna doesn't want to, Krishna won't give himself so
To
easily.
experience rasa, Prabhu, the exchange of love,
Go on, Mataji.
to experience the rasa when the devotees try to spread his glories. So to experience their love for him.
So that devotees, so to Krishna allows devotees to spread his own, give himself to others, as because he wants the devotees to relish that experience. Is that what you mean to say?
Yeah, I'm also saying that Krishna will relish that experience.
Oh, okay, right.
And also, it is one of the way of preaching to others from Krishna.
In what way?
Like to be a devotee, it's for our own benefit, for humankind benefit. Krishna wants to preach that my devotees are more dear to me, so become a devotee, kind of.
But that's a system that Krishna has set up. I
Yeah.
guess the question is, why has Krishna set it up in that way? So I think it is certainly true that Krishna wants to enhance the glories of his devotees. The devotees more freely give Krishna. And Krishna himself relishes that rasa, that all of this is certainly true. The other part that is also true is that devotees, when one associates with them, they give a particular mellow of relationship, of association with Krishna. So, for example, Krishna can adopt any kind of relationship with those who approach him. But what kind of relationship are we likely to get? Just like, for example, if I am in the traditional example, if a lady is marrying into a family, into her husband's family, she doesn't directly have a relationship with her husband's father and mother, but she takes on whatever relationship the husband has. If the husband calls his parents mommy, daddy, the wife also begins to call them mommy, daddy, or papa, dada, whatever the name terminology might be. And the same mood of relationship is imbibed. Krishna is a reservoir of all experiences and all rasas. And through the association of devotees, the particular mood of relationship that that devotee has with Krishna is imparted on to those who follow them. So we are known as Rupanugas and followers of Lord Chaitanya. And so there's a particular mood of associating with Krishna in Vrindavan that has come through our lineage. Whereas if you associate with the equally wonderful devotees in the Sri Vaishnava line, for example, there's another mood of relationship that one gets with Narayan in Vaikuntha. So just as to enter a family, one needs to marry into the family, so to speak, in the traditional example. Similarly, to enter Krishna's family, one basically needs to have that relationship with one's eternal father and enter Krishna's family in that way. But the second part is that if Krishna were to give devotional service to some and not to others, he could be accused of being partial. And so actually, even amongst devotees, the Uttamadhikari sees everybody as being a servant of Krishna. So the Uttamadhikari doesn't generally give devotional service directly because he cannot see anyone as being a non-devotee. But the Madhyamadhikari, the very definition is that they do discriminate. And they do see the difference between an Uttamadhikari, Madhyamadhikari, Kanishthadhikari, and those who are innocent and those who are envious. They see all of these gradations. That is their very definition. And so therefore, it is perfectly feasible for a Madhyamadhikari to give devotional service to Krishna and not be accused of partiality, because that's his very definition. When he sees somebody who is innocent or favorable, he goes and gives them Krishna consciousness. And so that Krishna is not himself partial. He operates through the Madhyamadhikari, generally speaking, to give Krishna consciousness to others. So this is the other explanation that's given. And the Vaishnava's explanations are also correct. Text number 17. Would someone like to read the translation?
Hare Krishna. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted.
So what were the key phrases in this verse?
The first one is Srinvata Swakata Krishna, like it is very important to do the hearing part. And by doing this hearing, like you have explained, that it expands into the remembrance of the Lord constantly and one develops love of Godhead. And then Abhadrani Vidunoti, like, the Abhadra, the impurities of the heart, they are washed away.
Yes, thank you. So I would break that first part down into the phrase Srinvatam. So Prabhupada here translates it as those who have developed the urge to hear the message of Krishna. So that urge to hear is what is important. Somebody can be listening on autopilot for 8 to 10 hours a day. That's not the same as somebody who has an eagerness to hear. What is described is not even that somebody is hearing, but somebody has the eagerness to hear. That desperation, that eagerness is what is being emphasized. You can think of somebody who's coming from an hour away from the temple, who is rushing to come to a Bhagvatam class or to a Sunday feast class or another class that's given in the temple, because they just want to sit, they want to be absorbed, they want to hear. They may even come late and they may be crying, they may be very frustrated, but that eagerness to hear is what is being described. You can contrast this to playing, for example, Mayapur TV at home while 10 things are happening. And there are many other conversations going on. They're two very, very different things. So here the emphasis is Shinvatam, the eagerness to hear. The second key phrase is Punya Shravana Kirtana, because that phrase establishes the process of hearing to be in and of itself the most purifying the most purifying thing that one can come in contact with. Earlier on in chapter 1, we heard that the hearing and chanting about Krishna was more purifying than associating with Ganga, which is the standard for something that is considered a pure object. And in Prabhupada's purport, that's one of his emphasis that he will speak of. And then, as Ujjvala Mataji pointed out, Abhadrani Vidunoti, the cleansing of the heart. So here is Srila Prabhupada's presentation of Punya Shravana Kirtana. Messages of the personality of God Sri Krishna are non-different from him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. What does offenseless mean?
Focused hearing as opposed to dreaming of something or just in the background, in one ear, out the other. So you're focusing on what you're hearing, on Krishna.
Yep, that is certainly true. I mean, focused hearing really means that the chance for offenses to come in are much, much, much less. Because we also say that attentive chanting, for example, is the central reason for not committing any of the other offenses. But what is it that constitutes an offensive attitude towards hearing and chanting?
The 10 offenses, which
Okay, so what is underpinning those 10 offenses?
so in the 10 offenses, like we are chanting about Krishna. Who is Krishna? How he is different from demigods? And what is the purpose of chanting? With all those right mindset, we should chant. Of course, listening what we are sound vibration.
But that is definitely true. That is absolutely true. But we also have that verse which says if somebody is calling out in a joking mood, or somebody is calling out, like Ajamil was calling out in a sense of neglect. He was calling his son, but he was not really addressing Krishna. So that was still offenseless.
That is for neophyte stage, maybe that is for applicable, not for a Madhyamalika or Uttamalika.
Okay, but the definition of offenses then applies across everything. It's a more general principle.
When it is done without any material motivation, only for the pleasure of the Lord.
That's a very high level. That's certainly pure chanting. So there are 3 stages of chanting, as the Vaishnavas know. One is offensive chanting, one is offenseless chanting, and the third is pure chanting of Krishna's names. The analogy that's given is like if you have a bright sun, if it's covered with clouds, though these are the results of offenses, and they don't allow the sun of the holy names to manifest in our life, on our tongue. If you have mist, Haridas Thakur in Harinam Chintamani compares this to ignorance of the position of the names. And it again shields the effect of the names from coming through. But our entire hearing and chanting is only for one purpose. So that one ray of the pure names of Krishna, they manifest on our tongue. Through this cloud of mist and anarthas, when that one ray of the pure sunshine of Krishna's names, they manifest in our heart or on our tongue, at that stage, that is called namabhas, or offenseless chanting. And if by Krishna's mercy or by the mercy of Vaishnavas, that one ray of the holy names manifests on our tongue, then Krishna's presence in that way, it completely destroys our material existence. And from that point on, that living entity is a liberated soul. But the basic principle behind offenses is to have an abusive attitude towards Krishna, or an exploitative attitude towards Krishna or the devotees. one can be filled with material desires. One may have committed many sins. The example is Jagai and Madai. But they'd never actually offended a Vaishnava. They'd never actually hurt, beaten up, exploited a Vaishnava. And so therefore, they were still qualified to develop love for Krishna, and despite their volume of sins. But this attitude, and if you think about the 10 offenses, somebody who criticizes, blasphemes, or insults a Vaishnava, there's an actual abusive, exploitative, critical attitude. There's a sense of envy that sits in the heart that propels those actions. Similarly, with the second offense, there's an active attempt to downgrade the position, Krishna's position, or the value of Krishna's names, or see Krishna's names as not being supremely powerful and the support of every other name in this world. In number 3 or 4, there's an active disregard of the spiritual master's instructions. So there's an attitude of there's an abusive attitude, an exploitative attitude that is there in our heart towards Krishna. With number 5 or 6, either not accepting the glories of Krishna's names or hearing about him, or making up one's own idea of what the power of Krishna's names are, or committing offenses on the strength of the holy names. On the strength of this relationship, I can do whatever I like. It's a mentality, it's an abusive, manipulative, a cunning, envious mentality. And that's the root of what constitutes an offensive attitude towards Krishna's names. Now, one may be inattentive, and that is actually part of the 10th offense. So when we say that to not have complete faith in the chanting of Krishna's names and to maintain material desires, even after hearing so much about this subject matter, when we say that, what we really mean is the sense of I and mine is so deeply established that I'm not able to get out of this space in order to chant Krishna's names properly. You cling on to material desires. Whenever you're chanting, material ideas or thoughts or desires come in, you don't push it off. You're not willing to get up above that platform. You're clinging on to the sense of I and mine. And so when we say it is at the end of reciting the 10 offenses, we say it is also an offense to be inattentive whilst chanting. It's not a separate offense. It's part of the 10th offense. In fact, it's an explanation of the 10th offense of chanting Krishna's names, or hearing and chanting about Krishna. But fundamentally, it is this attitude of an abusive and exploitative mood, or an envious mood that surrounds our relationship with Krishna and anything that is associated with Krishna. And when one hears and chants with that attitude, then the progress is minimal. But if one, even if one has many, many material desires, and one sincerely feels, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes this mood, a devotee can be involved in like many, many different bad habits. And they can sincerely feel from within the core of their heart, I am like a black sheep among the devotees. I'm wearing tilak and kantimala, and I am ashamed to present myself before the devotees in this way. But the mercy of the lotus feet of the devotees is everything for me, and I have nowhere else to go. So Krishna, please let me suffer as much as I need to for everything that I've done, but please don't push me away. Please keep me at your lotus feet. This is the attitude of the sincere sadhaka. And it is understood when we're talking about these verses, Shushusho Shadadhanasya Srinvatam Swakata Krishna, that the attitude of wanting to enjoy this material world or not being able to give up certain habits, it is inherent in this sadhaka at that stage. And so it is not a disqualification. But when one approaches Krishna with that attitude of wanting to grow, wanting to chant, wanting to hear, and one wants to grow out of the habits that one has and adopt the qualities of fully fixed devotee. That attitude is extremely favorable. And chanting with that attitude causes Krishna to manifest on one's tongue. And one's purification happens very, very, very quickly. If at that stage, it doesn't seem to be happening very quickly, there are other attitudes or other elements in our consciousness that need to be properly examined. How we are dealing with Vaishnavas, how are we, what is our mood when we're associating with service? We have to become extremely conscious. We can't, speak in a particular way to Vaishnavas and then sit down and expect to chant appropriately. We can't do our service in a way that upsets Vaishnavas and then go to Bhagvatam class and expect to experience ecstasy when hearing the Bhagvatam class. Those two things don't work. Our desire to hear and chant, when one becomes very sincere, you can see it in the attitude of a devotee by how they behave in the world around them. They become extremely conscious to avoid offending other living entities in whose heart Krishna is personally present, who are actually non-different to Krishna by virtue of being a part of his marginal potency. Certainly towards his devotees who are inspired by his internal potency, or towards his service. You see it in the attitude of the devotee. And by checking this attitude, by becoming eager to hear, the purification happens very quickly, because at that point, chanting Krishna's names, that ray of the sun of Krishna, Krishna's names, it completely manifests in our heart. And the purification happens immediately. So, messages of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna are non-different from him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Before I carry on, there are two verses I want to share with you. These verses are actually standard quotations that describe the distinction between offensive chanting of Krishna's names and offenseless chanting. These verses are worth memorizing. I'm just sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
This is a quote from the Padma Purana, CC Antya 360. Namekam Yasya, so one of Krishna's names, Vachi, that's manifest on the tongue, or Smarana Patagatam, it manifests in the mind, Shrotra Moolam Gatamba, that goes through the pathway of the ear. Shuddham va ashuddham varnam. So one's pronunciation may be pure or impure. What this means is I may say Krishna, or I may say Krishna, or Kashna. My pronunciation may be correct or incorrect. Vyavahita rahitam. It could be even it's not broken with offenses. Tarayati eva satyam. It liberates. Even just once, it either manifests on the tongue, the mind, or the ear. It will deliver one instantly. Tat ched, however, deha dravina janata loba pashanda madhye nikshiptam syan. If one's mind is oriented towards the body, wealth, towards fame, public support, Prabhupada translates it as lobha, or an atheistic attitude, pashanda madhye, nikshiptam, if it is directed, Na phala janakam shigram evatra vipra. This result doesn't manifest quickly. This verse is a quote from Padma Purana. It was quoted by Srila Haridas Thakur in conversation with Lord Chaitanya. It is presented in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya 360. And Srila Jiva Goswami, in his commentary to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, says this is a standard reference that describes the offenseless chanting of Krishna's names and the distinction between offensive and offenseless chanting of Krishna's names. So it is an attitude that is oriented towards the body, wealth, fame, greed, and an atheistic mentality that causes one to use Krishna for one's own benefit or actively degrade the value of Krishna's presence or his names. This verse is actually worth memorizing and keeping very close to one's heart.
Could you send us an excerpt? That's the verse and the English translation, please. Like if you could post it to us, that would be great. Thank you.
Just put it in the WhatsApp group.
Thank you.
Now, the second reference that I want to quote to you, it comes in Kunti Maharani's prayers, and these prayers are very famous. And you can just think of that phrase, Kintu Deha Dravina Janata Lobho Apashanda Madhye. Think of those phrases and think of what Kunti Maharani says. This is that verse, Janma Shvarya Shudha Shribhir. Text 26, chapter 8. So somebody who is madha, who's mad due to being proud of or absorbed in their high status of birth, their wealth, their learning, or their bodily beauty, edamana madaha, they've become crazy with these things. So it creates an attitude of focus on the body, similar to what Haridas Thakur quoted, Deha Dravina Janata Lobo Pashanda Madhya. And it creates an attitude of atheism in one's heart. It's a materialistic attitude, creates an attitude of atheism. Why? Because the core of the attitude that, body, wealth, learning, beauty matter, the core of that attitude is that I am the doer, I am the controller. And, I don't need Krishna. The core of that attitude is actually this. And so that orientation causes one to develop an attitude of atheism. And naiva arhati, Kunti Maharani says, naiva arhati abhidatum vai. Such a person does not deserve to come near you. Tvam akinchana gocharam, who is easily approached by somebody who's materially exhausted. And then Prabhupada actually comments on this. It's almost literally an explanation that is taken from Haridas Thakur's quote. It is said in the Shastras, remember, namekam yasya vachi smarana patagatam va shrota mulagatam va. So that was that phrase that was quoted from the Padma Purana. So it is said in the Shastras that by once uttering the holy name of the Lord, the sinner gets rid of a quantity of sins that he's unable to commit. Such is the power of uttering the holy name of the Lord. There's not the least exaggeration in this statement. Actually, the Lord's holy name has such powerful potency, but there is a quality to such utterances also. It depends on the quality of feeling. A helpless man can feelingly utter the holy name of the Lord, whereas a man who utters the same holy name in great material satisfaction cannot be so sincere. A materially puffed up man may utter the holy name of the Lord occasionally, but he is incapable of uttering the name in quality. Therefore, the 4 principles of material advancement, namely high parentage, good wealth, high education, attractive beauty, are, so to speak, disqualifications for progress on the path of spiritual advancement. So this is the definition of offensive chanting that one should keep very close to heart. offensive hearing and chanting.
Prabhu, which is this verse number? You just showed now.
It is Canto 1, Chapter 8, text number 26.
Thank you.
So, coming back to Srila Prabhupada's purport, text number 17. Prabhupada says, whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtaka declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, and that he has endowed his innumerable names with the same potency. There's no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that he can be present before us personally in the form of transcendental sound, but unfortunately, we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's name and activities. We have already discussed developing a taste for hearing and chanting the holy sound. It is done through the medium of service to the pure devotee of the Lord. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. When he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. That's that verse, Desham Satyayuktanam. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead. But anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps in all respects. And in some sense, sometimes we may think that that the eagerness to go back to Godhead and serve Krishna personally seems a very lofty goal. And sometimes devotees say, how do I know that I'm making advancement? How do I know that I'm going towards my goal? How do I know that I'm developing an eagerness to attain Krishna? The answer to this is to the increasing level that one develops an eagerness to hear and chant about Krishna. That is sufficient. The process of sadhana bhakti is non-different to Krishna. And by hearing and chanting about Krishna, we're directly associating with Krishna. This is true for us now. It will be true for us in the spiritual world also. So the only thing we have to really worry about, what happens at the end of life, is in some sense irrelevant. It's almost like a test. Whether the coming of the test is only to make us more intense in hearing and chanting now. But the only thing we really need to focus on is to utilize the time that we have to properly hear and chant, as was mentioned previously, with the proper attitude, with the proper absorption, with the eagerness to hear. And developing that taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna is itself an indication of one's advancement. Some devotees ask, what is the recommendation if one has such an offensive attitude, or one may have knowingly or unknowingly committed these offenses in the past? The answer is, what is the remedy? Srila Prabhupada gives the solution in his purports to the Ajamil pastime. And if I can find the verse, that would be helpful. But I think it's quoted in Srila Prabhupada's purport. So here is the verse. It's a quote from the Padma Purana. It comes in the Yamaraja's teachings to the Yamadutas. The reference is Canto 6, Chapter 3, text number 24. And so here's Srila Prabhupada's comment. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is recommended even for persons who commit offenses, because if they continue chanting, they will gradually chant offenselessly. So this is the answer to the question about why we chant again and again. If once chanting Krishna's names is sufficient, why do we chant again and again? It's because the attitude, the offensive attitude towards Krishna, comes through our many lifetimes of presence in this material world. It is unfortunate, but it is our position. This is nothing to feel depressed about. There's nothing to feel upset about. It is what it is. But by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra without offenses, one increases his love for Krishna. As stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prema Pumarto Mahan, one's main concern should be to increase one's attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to increase one's love for Him. And there's a verse that Prabhupada quotes here. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also quotes this verse from the Padma Purana. Nama Parada Yukta Nam Namani Eva Harantyagam Avishranti Prayuktani Tani Evarta Karani Cha. Even in the beginning, one chants the Hare Krishna mantra with offenses. One will become free from such offenses by chanting again and again. Papa Shayascha Bhavanti Smaratam Tam Aharnisham. One becomes free from all sinful reactions, here referring to offenses, that offensive attitude, if one chants day and night, following the recommendation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so this is why we chant again and again. And the description of the devotee at the stage of Nishtha, this is both a prescription and a description, is with a humble attitude, offering all respects to others, expecting none return, one chants the names of Krishna constantly. So this has to be the goal that we aim to. If we are serious about overcoming offenses and advancing in Krishna consciousness, the constant chanting of Krishna's names is essential. The Prabhupada continues. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. When he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. I've read this section. One cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleared of all sins. The material sins are products of our desires to lord it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. Woman and wealth are very difficult problems for the devotee making progress on the path back to Godhead. This is a sentence I remember over and over and over again. Many stalwarts in the devotional line fell victim to these allurements and thus retreated from the path of liberation. But when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord. To become restless in the contact of woman and wealth is not an astonishment, because every living being is associated with such things from remote time, practically immemorial. And it takes time to recover from this foreign nature. But if one is engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, gradually he realizes his real position. By the grace of God, such a devotee gets sufficient strength to defend himself from the state of disturbances, and gradually all disturbing elements are eliminated from his mind. Text number 18. Can someone read the translation?
By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Hare Krishna.
Purport. Here is the remedy for eliminating all inauspicious things within the heart, which are considered to be obstacles in the path of self-realization. The remedy is the association of the Bhagavatas. There are two types of Bhagavatas, namely the book Bhagavata and the devotee Bhagavata. Both the Bhagavatas are competent remedies, and both of them, or either of them, can be good enough to eliminate the obstacles. A devotee Bhagavata is as good as the book Bhagavata because the devotee Bhagavata leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavata, and the book Bhagavata is full of information about the personality of Godhead and his pure devotees, who are also Bhagavatas. Bhagavata book and person are identical. Human reason, skipping a sentence, fails to understand how serving the devotee Bhagavata or the book Bhagavata, one gets gradual promotion on the path of devotion. But actually, these are facts explained by Sri Narada Deva, who happened to be a maidservant's son in his previous life. Skipping a few sentences. And to understand these effects practically, it should be noted that by sincere association of the Bhagavatas, one is sure to receive transcendental knowledge very easily, with the result that he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. And this is actually the central message of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. It is, one should keep hearing about the glories of Krishna until such time that Krishna's pastimes are realized within one's heart. And the realization that these pastimes are real, Krishna's qualities are so extraordinarily wonderful. That realization brings one to the stage of Nishtha Bhakti, because it causes us to throw away everything else from our heart. This is actually one of the keynotes of Srimad Bhagavatam. The more progress is made in devotional service under the guidance of the Bhagavatas, the more one becomes fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The messages of the book Bhagavata, therefore, have to be received from the devotee Bhagavata, and the combination of these two Bhagavatas will help the neophyte devotee to make progress on and on. Text 19. Translation, sorry.
As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. Hare Krishna.
What were the key phrases of this verse? We forgot to ask that for the previous verse. But the previous verse, the key phrases are Nashta Prayeshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So those were the two key phrases. Text number 19, what are the phrases?
You mentioned Tada Rajastamu Bhava, Kama Lobhayadayascha Ye, and Sattve Prasidati.
Close. The first key phrase is anavidam, because it indicates that even the slight presence that is left of passion and ignorance no longer cause an obstacle to hearing and chanting. So
Sorry, which one is that?
anavidam in the third line.
Okay.
And then stitam sattve prasidati. So this is sattva with the complete reduction or elimination of rajas and tamas. So it indicates that one is experiencing Shuddha Sattva, which is the platform on which one can receive Krishna properly in the heart. So Prabhupada in the purport comments, a living being in his normal constitutional position is fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. So Stitam Sattve Prasidati, devoid of Rajas and Tamas. Prabhupada is talking about Shuddha Sattva. This state of existence is called Brahma Bhuta or Atmanandi, or the state of self-satisfaction. This self-satisfaction is not like the satisfaction of the inactive fool. The inactive fool is in a state of foolish ignorance, whereas the self-satisfied Atmanandi is transcendental to the material state of existence. Sometimes you see somebody who is just drunk. I don't know if this is the proper example. During Balram Purnima in Melbourne, you see they actually make varuni. And I've tried that drink. I can't drink more than 1 teaspoon. It is so incredibly sweet. But there are some devotees who can drink 6, 7. Someone once drank, I think, 30 cups of Varuni. Now, you drink that much Varuni, you just like are in a state of complete bliss. You don't know what's happening around you. You are just out of it completely. It's a state of intoxication. You can't compare. That may not be the best example. I didn't want to use example of drugs or alcohol, but you can't compare that state with the state of a devotee who is completely pacified by virtue of having developed that absorption in hearing and chanting about Krishna. Because for that devotee who has developed such absorption, the disturbances of life don't touch them. Yes, they feel hurt. Yes, they feel pain if they're hurt or their children are hurt or family are affected, but it doesn't stop their absorption, their routine of hearing and chanting. And that's the speciality of this devotee. So Prabhupada says, the inactive fool is in a state of foolish ignorance, whereas the self-satisfied Atmanandi is transcendental to the material state of existence. This stage of perfection is attained as soon as one is fixed in irrevocable devotional service. Devotional service is not inactivity, but the unalloyed activity of the soul. You know, there's an interesting point that can be brought out here. Some devotees ask, you know, I am not this body. I am not this material mind and intelligence. So when I advance in Krishna consciousness, will I see Krishna through my mind, material mind and intelligence? Isn't it the same? Because advanced devotees, they also see, they also think, they also perceive. Do they perceive with the material mind and intelligence? If not, if they're perceiving through the soul's mind and intelligence, how and when does that transition take place? It's an interesting question. What happens to one's nature? So I have a particular personality, and you see that for advanced devotees, many times the nature that they had when they were younger, externally, you see carry forward. The way they laugh, the way they walk sometimes, the way the prasadam that they like. I remember that there was one boy, he was a young kid growing up in the Chowpatty congregation, Pune congregation, and he went with Govind Prabhu on a yatra. And he asked Govind Prabhu a question with a view of, you know, asking for particular information. He said, Prabhu, can you tell me what His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj's favorite prasadam was before he became a devotee? And Govind Prabhu said he really liked pizza, Italian food in general. And then this devotee, his name is Karuna Gaurang Prabhu, he's an initiated devotee now. He served in Maharaj's Bhakti Yoga Center in New York. And he said, well, what is Maharaj's favorite prasadam now? And Govind Prabhu said, well, it's pizza. I mean, he still likes it. He doesn't ask for it, but it's pizza. So this boy, he's 10 years old. He has a question in his mind. He's asking, well, if before and after the picture hasn't changed, why do you say that Krishna consciousness can cause a change in one's nature? It's a very bright question, and it's a hard question to answer. And it became an argument. At some point, Govind Prabhu shouted at the boy, saying that nature's personalities don't change in Krishna consciousness. And that kind of concluded the discussion. Now, this answer is not a complete answer. The answer to this question is actually given in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagvatam in Kapila Dev's teachings. So there he gives 2 analogies of how purification of the heart happens. One is applicable for a general transcendentalist who's aiming after impersonal liberation. The second example you will see in the Bhagavatam applies to a devotee. So the first example, and many would have heard about this, is you have a lamp and you have a wick. When you have the oil in the lamp, the wick remains burning. So the oil represents our material conditioning are impressions that have lasted from time immemorial. And the flame represents our material mind, if you will, our material inclinations, thought processes, whatever. And so as long as those samskaras or those impressions, as long as that oil remains, the material mind stays. And so there, for most transcendentalists, the way of purification is you extinguish your impressions, your vasanas, your samskaras, and your material mind at some point just is destroyed. And then what happens? You exist as a spirit soul. You have no reaction to anything, generally speaking, materially or spiritually. Sorry, that's not the right word. There's no reaction to anything from an aversion or a hate perspective. You see everything neutrally. You're able to appreciate Krishna's presence generally in the form of his all-pervasive energy in this world. This is the state of Brahmabhuta Prasannatma. And yes, there is a general feeling of bliss. There is a general taste that comes by hearing and chanting about Krishna, but it is not as specific. The spiritual mind and intelligence and senses of this practitioner have not really fully developed, and they don't have that specialized appreciation of Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. But the second analogy that is used in the Bhagavatam is that of digestion. So when somebody eats, the portion of the food that is useful is assimilated in the body. So you imagine you're eating salad. There's a portion of the salad which is certainly consumed by the body and is absorbed by the body as nutrition. And then there's a portion which is discarded by the body. Similarly, a devotee may start liking a particular type of music. It might be rock and roll music, jazz, or what have you. And initially, when they come into Krishna consciousness, they like to hear kirtans in that particular form, and generally they don't like to hear other forms of kirtan. Similarly, you find that they have particular tastes and a particular personality. What happens in the process of devotional service is, because these personalities, these forms of music are not bad, they still can be connected to Krishna. And so for the devotee, what happens is the part that can be connected to Krishna, that causes nourishment as they advance, it stays. And everything else gets discarded. So for a devotee who has particular taste for prasadam, he may still like that prasadam, but you offer him pizza that is not prasadam, he will take it and throw it away. He cannot bear to look at it. He would prefer a fruit that is prasadam to pizza that is not prasadam. So his appreciation of the same thing has been refined to appreciate the fact that it has been made by a devotee, it's been offered with devotion, and Krishna has personally tasted it. And when he's tasting the pizza, the part that his devotionally surcharged consciousness accepts is the devotion that is inherent in that object. So when you say His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj still likes pizza, what you're really saying here is that His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj really appreciates the devotion, the fact that it's been made without affection for Krishna, it has been offered without affection for Krishna, and he's tasting Krishna's saliva when he's eating that prasadam. The other part, it's not there any longer. And this is shown by the fact that when in many years ago, when devotees invited His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj for prasadam, now Maharaj's health condition is such that he can't eat fermented foods. This devotee, not knowing this, made dosa, really nice dosa, and other such items for Maharaj. Maharaj ate it with relish because he was appreciating the quality of the offering that was being made. When he went back to Chowpatty, because it would have completely damaged his health, he was seen like over a toilet, just taking it all out because it would have damaged his health. So what Maharaj appreciated and valued in that interaction was not the just the taste of the prasadam in isolation, but the devotional exchange and the mood of service that accompanied that prasadam. So this is the example of digestion. Whatever the devotee may ingest, at some stage their consciousness becomes so refined as to appreciate Krishna's presence in the things that they formerly liked. And their experience broadens more generally, so that if they start to like, say, rock and roll music, at some stage they're advanced to just appreciate Krishna's names in whichever form of kirtan it is heard. And they will not listen to rock and roll music directly. They will lose that taste. But what is still fit for purpose to engage with Krishna? Their manner of speaking, their personality, all of that is kept by the process of devotional service because it is still fit to be used. And this devotee continues to use it without identifying with it. Simultaneously, what happens is that from the stage of Nishtha onwards, their spiritual mind, their spiritual intelligence, it begins to manifest more and more and more. And this devotee has an increasingly specialized appreciation of Krishna in accordance with the mood of service they're cultivating. So you will see, for example, pujaris, when they see Krishna, like Radha Gopinath or their deities at home, they have a very special mood of appreciation towards their deities. These are the functions of their spiritual intelligence, which after years of service have been refined to appreciate Krishna's beauty in this way. Similarly, those who cook for Krishna, their senses are refined, so they experience Krishna when they taste prasadam, when they're serving prasadam. There's a unique experience of Krishna that their spiritually developed senses are able to access. So devotees who serve, it is not like that their subtle body is destroyed, but rather the part of the subtle body that is not fit for service is removed. The part of their subtle body, their personality, which is fit for service, is retained by the process of devotional service. They use it without identifying with it. And simultaneously, their spiritual senses and their spiritual personality increasingly manifests until at the stage of prema bhakti, they're internally, you have that verse from Rupa Goswami, Seva sadhaka rupena something atrahi. But externally, they perform the service of a sadhaka. Internally, they're cultivating their relationship with Krishna in the mood of a specific associate of Krishna in the spiritual world. And they develop a specialized appreciation for Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes in conjunction with that service. And an example of this is when Krishna was returning to Dwaraka from Hastinapur, the devotees, or another example, when Krishna was going into Mathura, you had devotees like the garland maker, Sudama, who would see Krishna and they would see that he's tired. And their appreciation of Krishna's beauty was through his service, that Krishna would look more beautiful, or he would look particularly beautiful with a garland that looks just like this. And he would feel less tired if he had this. Similarly, when Krishna was holding up Govardhan Hill, Mother Yashoda was seeing that Krishna's body weight had reduced to such an extent that his ornaments were seen to be slipping down. This is the specialized appreciation of Krishna in the mood of service that Mother Yashoda has. Similarly, the gopis would just see that Krishna is looking only at Radharani through the corner of their eyes. And this is Radharani's intimate friends. Madhumangal's vision was, Krishna, you are actually completely fine because I, as a Brahmana, through my Brahminical prowess, I'm supporting the whole Govardhan Hill. So everyone has their specialized vision of Krishna at that time, according to the mood of their service. And these spiritualized senses, beginning from the stage of Nishtha Bhakti, they increasingly develop and manifest. And you see glimpses of a devotee's personality, which is normally hidden from the world. But externally, Bhakti Devi retains a semblance of that devotee's personality in this world in accordance with what is still fit to be engaged in Krishna's service. Did that explanation make any sense? Was any part of that confusing?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have just a quick confirmation about something.
Yes.
When we talk about this translation, it is said that the devotee is established in goodness. So we are talking about pure goodness, right? Here.
Sthitam sattve prasiddhati but tada rajas tamo bhava. So
pure goodness?
He's unaffected. So pure, the definition of Shuddha Sattva is Sattva undisturbed by passion and ignorance, right?
Yeah.
So those two elements are present in this verse. Sitam Sattve Prasiddhati Rajas Tamo Bhava Cheta Eter Anavidam. So the
devotee is established in pure goodness at that point.
Yeah.
Right. And we are talking about the Uttam Adhikari here, right?
No. This is the stage of Nishtha Bhakti.
Okay.
And the stage of Ruchi, actually.
Okay. Thank you.
Because they're no longer affected by material taste, Cheta Eter Anavidam, they develop a unique taste for Krishna with spiritualized senses. So that's the stage of Ruchi.
Thank you.
This stage of perfection is attained as soon as one is fixed in irrevocable devotional service. Devotional service is not inactivity, but the unalloyed activity of the soul. The soul's activity becomes adulterated in contact with matter, and as such, the diseased activities are expressed in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. The effect of devotional service becomes manifest by complete elimination of these effects of passion and ignorance. The devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness, and he makes further progress to rise to the position of Vasudeva, or the stage of unmixed sattva or Shuddha Sattva. Only in this Shuddha Sattva state can one always see Krishna eye to eye by dint of pure affection for the Lord. Text number 20. Can someone read the translation?
Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by the contact with devotional service to the Lord gained positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Hare Krishna.
So the key phrases of this verse: Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata, referring to Asakti; Prasanna Manaso, referring to Bhava Bhakti; Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam, referring to Prema Bhakti. Prabhupada's purport. In Bhagavad Gita 7.3, it is said that out of many thousands of ordinary men, one fortunate man endeavors for perfection in life. Mostly men are conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus they're always engaged in lust, desire, hankerings, ignorance, and sleep. Out of many such man-like animals, there's actually a man who knows the responsibility of human life and thus tries to make life perfect by following the prescribed duties. Out of many thousands of such persons who have thus attained success in human life, one may know scientifically about the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita 1855, it is also said that scientific knowledge of Sri Krishna is understood only by the process of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga. The very same thing is confirmed herein in the above words. No ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. As soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. This attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or in other words, one is actually a Brahmana by qualification. A Brahmana is the symbol of Sattva Guna, or the mode of goodness. And others who are not in the mode of goodness are either Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, or less than Shudras. The Brahminical stage is the highest stage of human life because of its good qualities. Skipping a sentence, the devotee is already a Brahmana by action, but that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a devotee has to become a Vaishnava in fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage. A pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. Skipping a couple of sentences, one has to surpass the Brahmanical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead Krishna. The study of the personality of Godhead is the subject matter for study by the postgraduate students of the spiritual line. Last sentence, when a qualified Brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava, in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know what is actually the personality of Godhead. Text 21. Can someone read the translation?
Thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master. Hare Krishna.
Starting to comment on that phrase, Drishta evatmanishvare. Attaining scientific knowledge of the personality of God, it means seeing one's own self simultaneously. As far as the identity of the living being as spirit self is concerned, there are a number of speculations or misgivings. You're referring to sarva samshaya. The materialist does not believe in the existence of the spirit self, and the empiric philosophers believe in the impersonal feature of the whole spirit without individuality of the living beings. But the transcendentalists affirm that the soul and the supersoul are two different identities, qualitatively one but quantitatively different. There are many other theories, but all these different speculations are at once cleared off as soon as Sri Krishna is realized in truth by the process of bhakti yoga. Sri Krishna is like the sun, and the materialistic speculations about the absolute truth are like the darkest midnight. As soon as the Krishna sun is arisen within one's heart, the darkness of materialistic speculations about the absolute truth and the living entities is at once cleared off. Next paragraph. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that in order to show special favor to his pure devotees, he personally eradicates the dense darkness of all misgivings by switching on the light of pure knowledge within the heart of a devotee. Therefore, because of the personality of Godhead's taking charge of illuminating the heart of his devotee, certainly a devotee engaged in his service in transcendental love cannot remain in darkness. He comes to know everything of the absolute and the relative truths. Last paragraph. This enlightenment perfectly enables the devotee to distinguish spirit from matter, because a knot of matter and spirit is untied by the Lord. This knot is called ahankar, and it falsely obliges a living being to become identified with matter. As soon as this knot is loosened, therefore, all the clouds of doubt are at once cleared off. One sees his master, Eva Atmani Ishvare, the master of the self, and fully engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, making a full termination of the chain of fruitive action. Text 22. Someone read the translation.
Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self.
Commenting on Kurvanti Atma Prasadani. Purport. The speciality of devotional service under the personality of Godhead Lord Sri Krishna is specifically mentioned herein. Lord Sri Krishna is the Swayam Rupa personality of Godhead. Swayam Rupa is a term to speak about the original personality of Godhead. It's a term that is used by Lord Chaitanya in describing the incarnations of the Lord in teachings to Sanatana Goswami. It is also spoken of in Rupa Goswami's Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Lord Sri Krishna is the Swayam Rupa personality of Godhead, and all of the forms of Godhead, beginning from Sri Baladev, Shankarshana, Vasudeva, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Narayana, and extending to the Purusha avatars, Guna avatars, Leela avatars, Yuga avatars, and many other thousands of manifestations of the personality of Godhead, are Lord Sri Krishna's plenary portions and integrated parts. The living entities are separated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, Lord Sri Krishna is the original form of Godhead, and he is the last word in the transcendence. Thus, he is more attractive, Kurvanti Atma Prasadanim, to the higher transcendentalists who participate in the eternal pastimes of the Lord. In forms of the personality of Godhead other than Sri Krishna and Baladev, there is no facility for intimate personal contact as in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord at Brajabhumi. The transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna are not newly accepted. And that was the key part of this verse, because the idea is, this is not just a new idea, but ato vai kavayo nityam, since time, eternity, and that's the proof that Krishna alone should be worshipped. The transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna are not newly accepted, as argued by some less intelligent persons. His pastimes are eternal and are manifested in due course once in a day of Brahmaji, as the sun rises on the eastern horizon at the end of every 24 hours. Text 23.
The transcendental personality of Godhead is indirectly associated with the three modes of material nature, namely passion, goodness, and ignorance, and the just for the material world's creation, maintenance, and destruction. He accepts the three qualitative forms of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Of these three, all human beings can derive ultimate benefit from Vishnu, the form of the quality of goodness. Hare Krishna.
So just recalling the idea behind this verse, the idea is that even though Krishna expands himself into everything in this world, it is that original form of Krishna alone who is the object of worship, the proper object of worship. Purport. That Lord Sri Krishna by his plenary part should be rendered devotional service as explained above is confirmed by the statement. Lord Sri Krishna and his plenary parts are Vishnu Tattva. From Sri Krishna, the next manifestation is Baladev. From Baladev is Sankarshana. From Sankarshana is Narayana. From Narayana, there's a second Sankarshana. And from this Sankarshana, the Vishnu Purushavataras. So this description is not there in Srimad Bhagvatam. The reason is that the Srimad Bhagavatam focuses on describing Bhagavan. And so therefore, it more makes a distinction between Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In the scriptures, sometimes the absolute truth is described as one without a second. Sometimes the absolute truth is described as two, as Radha and Krishna, for example. In other places, or Lakshmi Narayan. In other places, the absolute truth is described as three, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And in other places, the absolute truth is described in four features. And you see this a lot in the Vaishnava Tantras, in terms of Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. And this describes how Krishna expands himself in different parts. So for instance, Garbhata Kashaya Vishnu is associated with Pradyumna. Shirada Kashaya Vishnu, Paramatma within the heart, is associated with Aniruddha. The expansion of Shankarshana is considered to be Mahavishnu. So in this way, the all-pervasive nature, how Krishna enters and controls every function of our material existence, to describe this point, the scriptures describe the absolute truth in these four features. But the Bhagavatam's presentation is focused on describing Bhagavan, and that personality of Godhead with whom we can develop a relationship. So for this reason, it does not directly describe Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. But this information is certainly described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in particularly in the section that's explaining Lord Nityananda's position. I think it's chapter 5 or 6 of Adi Leela, if I'm not wrong. And that information, Kaviraj Goswami is himself sourcing it from Vaishnava Tantras, which describe this in great detail. The Vishnu, or the deity of the quality of goodness in the material world, is the Purush Avatara known as Kshirodakashaya Vishnu or Paramatma. Brahma is the deity of Rajas and Shiva of ignorance. They are the three departmental heads of the three qualities of this material world. Creation is made possible by the goodness of Vishnu, and when it requires to be destroyed, Lord Shiva does it by the Tandava Nritya, or the dance of destruction. The materialists and foolish human beings worship Brahma and Shiva respectively, but the pure transcendentalists worship the form of goodness Vishnu in his various forms. Vishnu is manifested by his millions and billions of integrated forms, meaning his own personal expansions, his Swamrupa or his other such expansions, and those separated expansions, such as the jivas, including Brahma, are also expansions of Krishna, but they're not worshipped. The integrated forms are called Godhead, and the separated forms are called the living entities of the jivas. Both the jivas and Godhead have their original spiritual forms. Anyone skipping several sentences, therefore, who wishes to get out of this prison, I should read a section here. Both the jivas and Godhead have their original spiritual forms. So Prabhupada is explaining why we don't worship the other forms of Krishna. Jivas are sometimes subjected to the control of the material energy, but the Vishnu forms are always controllers of this energy. Such living entities appear in the material world with intentions of being lords, and thus they are trapped by the three modes of nature. As such, the living entities have to change their material coverings for ongoing different terms of imprisonment. But as far as maintenance of the prison house is concerned, it is done by Vishnu, as much as the state prison house is maintained by the state. Anyone, therefore, who wishes to get out of this prison house of material existence, which is full of miseries like the repetition of birth, death, disease, and old age, must please Lord Vishnu for such liberation. No demigod, however, can release the imprisoned living being from the conditioned life of material existence. This can be done only by Vishnu. Therefore, the ultimate benefit may be derived from Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. Text number 24. Can someone read the translation?
Firewood
Is a transformation of earth. Firewood is a transformation of earth, but smoke is better than the raw wood, and fire is still better. But by fire we can derive the benefits of superior knowledge through Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, passion, rajas, is better than ignorance, tamas. But goodness, sattva, is best because by goodness one can come to the realize the absolute truth.
So Prabhupada is going to explain that yes, the highest benefit is obtained by worshipping Vishnu. However, there may be stages that one needs to follow in order to get there. As explained above, one can get released from the conditioned life of material existence by devotional service to the personality of Godhead. It is further comprehended herein that one has to rise to the platform of the mode of goodness, sattva, so that one can be eligible for the devotional service of the Lord. But if there are impediments on the progressive path, anyone, even from the platform of tamas, can gradually rise to the sattva platform by the expert direction of the spiritual master. Sincere candidates must therefore approach an expert spiritual master, must therefore approach an expert spiritual master for such a progressive march. And the bona fide expert spiritual master is competent to direct a disciple from any stage of life, tamas, rajas, or sattva. It is a mistake, therefore, to consider that worship of any quality or any form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is equally beneficial. Except Vishnu, all separated forms are manifested under the conditions of material energy. And therefore, the forms of material energy cannot help one to rise to the platform of sattva, which alone can liberate a person from material bondage. Text 25. Someone read the translation.
Previously, all the great sages rendered service unto the personality of Godhead due to his existence above the three modes of material nature. They worshipped him to become free from material conditions and thus derive the ultimate benefit. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from the material world. Hare Krishna.
So the idea is here that sages have worshipped Krishna in order to obtain liberation. The purpose of performing religion is neither to profit by material gain nor to get a simple knowledge of discerning matter from spirit. The ultimate aim of religious performances is to release oneself from material bondage and regain the life of freedom in the transcendental world, where the personality of Godhead is the supreme person. Persons who desire their own good may follow these Mahajans and thus attain the supreme benefit. Text 26, translation.
Those who are serious about liberation are certainly non-envious, and they respect all. Yet they reject the horrible and ghastly forms of the demigods and worship only the all-blissful forms of Lord Vishnu and his plenary portions. Hare Krishna.
The second paragraph. The separated parts and parcels have different positions in the estimation of material powers, and some of them are like Kala Bhairava, Smashana Bhairava, Shani, Mahakali, and Chandika. These demigods are worshipped mostly by those who are in the lower categories of the modes of darkness or ignorance. Other demigods like Brahma, Shiva, Surya, Ganesh, and many similar deities are worshipped by men in the mode of passion, urged on by the desire for material enjoyment. But those who are actually situated in the mode of goodness, of material nature, worship only Vishnu Tattvas. Vishnu Tattvas are represented by various names and forms such as Narayana, Damodara, Vamana, Govinda, and Adokshaja. Fourth paragraph. Highly qualified Brahmanas situated in the mode of goodness have no grudges against the mode of worship of others. They have all respect for other demigods, even though they may look ghastly, like Kala Bhairava or Mahakali. They know very well that these horrible features of the Supreme Lord are all different servitors of the Lord under different conditions for different purposes. Yet they reject the worship of both horrible and attractive features of the demigod, and they concentrate only on the forms of Vishnu because they're serious about liberation from material conditions. And the context behind text 26 again was that those who want liberation worship Vishnu. Those who do not want liberation, they worship others. The demigods, even to the stage of Brahma, the supreme of all the demigods, cannot offer liberation to anyone. Hiranyakashipu underwent a severe type of penance to become eternal in life, but his worshipful deity Brahma could not satisfy him with such blessings. Therefore, Vishnu and none else, none else, probably say no one else, right? None else is called Muktipada, or the personality of Godhead who can bestow upon us mukti, liberation. The demigods, being like other living entities in the material world, are all liquidated at the time of the annihilation of the material structure. They are themselves unable to get liberation, and what to speak of giving liberation to their devotees. It is for this reason only that the candidates of liberation deliberately reject the worship of the demigods, although they have no disrespect for any one of them. Text 27, verse.
Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship those in the same category, namely the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities. For they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny.
Middle of first paragraph. More wealth, more women, and false aristocracy are some of the demands of the materially disposed man, because he has no information of the benefits derived from Vishnu worship. By Vishnu worship, one can derive the benefit in this life as well as in life after death. Forgetting these principles, foolish people who are after more wealth, more wives, more children, worship various demigods. The aim of life is to end the miseries of life and not to increase them. For material enjoyment, there's no need to approach the demigods. The demigods are but servants of the Lord. As such, they're duty-bound to supply necessities of life in the form of water, light, air, etc. One should work hard and worship the Supreme Lord by the fruits of one's hard labor for existence. And that should be the motto of life. And then Prabhupada explains the pastime of Indra. Text 28-29, translation.
In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. Yoga is for realizing him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only. He is supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life. Hare Krishna.
That Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is the only object of worship is confirmed in these two shlokas. It's the conclusion of what we've been discussing. In the Vedic literature, there is the same objective. So this is the explanation of Vasudeva Paraveda, establishing one's relationship and ultimately reviving one's lost loving relationship with him. That is the sum and substance of. In the Bhagavad Gita, the same theory is confirmed by the Lord in his own words. The ultimate purpose of the Vedas is to know him only. Second paragraph. This is explaining Vasudeva Paramakaha. One may argue that the Vedic activities are based on sacrificial ceremonies. That is true. But all such sacrifices are also meant for realizing the truth about Vasudeva. Another name of Vasudeva is Yagya. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that all sacrifices and all activities are to be conducted for the satisfaction of Yagya or Vishnu, the supreme personality, the personality of Godhead. This is the case also with the yoga system. So that's an explanation of Vasudeva Para Yoga. Yoga means to get in touch with the Supreme Lord. The process, however, includes several bodily features such as asana, dhyana, pranayama, and meditation. And all of them are meant for concentrating upon the localized aspect of Vasudeva, represented as Paramatma. This is also true for the culture of knowledge. The Prabhupada here is explaining Vasudeva Param Jnanam. And Prabhupada here is not, I think, directly commented on Vasudeva Parakriya. This is also so for the culture of knowledge. According to Bhagavad Gita, there are 18 items in culturing knowledge. This is 13th chapter, verses 8 to 12. By such culture of knowledge, one becomes gradually prideless, devoid of vanity, non-violent, forbearing, simple, devoted to the great spiritual master, and self-controlled. By culture of knowledge, one becomes unattached to hearth and home, and becomes conscious of the miseries due to death, birth, old age, and disease. And all culture of knowledge culminates in devotional service to the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Therefore, Vasudeva is the ultimate aim in culturing all different branches of knowledge. Actually, in the 13th chapter, after describing Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Gneyam, Krishna begins, in 13:19, he says, Mad Bhakta Etad Vijnana Mad Bhavaya Upapadyate. That my devotee understanding this, he attains my nature. So that knowledge is intended for a devotee and is meant to obtain Krishna. That's the indication that Prabhupada is giving. Then next, Vasudeva Param Tapaha. The same applies to all kinds of austerities. Tapasya means voluntary acceptance of bodily pains to achieve some higher end of life. Ravana and Hiranyakashipu underwent a severe type of bodily torture to achieve the end of sense gratification. Sometimes modern politicians also undergo different types of austerities to achieve some political end, referring to Gandhi, of course. This is not actually tapasya. One should accept voluntary bodily inconvenience for the sake of knowing Vasudeva, because that is the real way. That is the way of real austerities. Otherwise, all forms of austerities are classified as modes of passion and ignorance. In the 17th chapter of the Gita, there's a description of austerities in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, if you remember. So there are austerities of the mind, austerities of the body, austerities of words that are described. But at the end, the crux of chapter 17 is 1723. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho brahmanas tri vidasmrita. Brahmanas tena vedascha yagyascha vihitapura. That previously, all brahmanas, even Lord Brahma himself, would engage in all kinds of sacrifices and austerities, and all of that would be useless until it was dedicated to the Lord with the phrases Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho. So by indicating nirdesha, that Supreme Lord by his names, Om Tat and Sat, meaning that these activities were dedicated to Krishna, all of those activities had no value or did not bear fruit. And so that's the point being mentioned here. If austerities are not dedicated to the Supreme Lord, they remain in goodness, passion, and ignorance. And in goodness, they offer some mitigation of miseries. They offer a certain amount of pleasantness as you go through life. In the modes of passion, they typically produce some level of agitation. In the mode of ignorance, they just produce torture and misery. Like one example in the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is fasting without any rhyme or reason. And the way it is described in the Bhagavad Gita, it's a torture to the self and even to the super soul within the heart. So this kind of austerity has no value whatsoever. Then I'm not sure if Srila Prabhupada directly comments on Vasudeva Paradharma. But in towards the end of the last purport, Prabhupada says, therefore, all culture of knowledge, austerity, sacrifice, and activities should be aimed at changing the quality of the influence that is acting upon us. For the present, we are all controlled by the external energy of the Lord. And just to change the quality of the influence, we must endeavor to cultivate spiritual energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that those who are Mahatmas, or those whose minds have been so broadened as to be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, are under the influence of the internal potency. And the effect is that such broad-minded living beings are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord without deviation. That should be the aim of life. And that is the verdict of all the Vedic literatures. No one should bother himself with fruitive activities or dry speculation about transcendental knowledge. Everyone should at once engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Nor should one worship different demigods who work as different hands of the Lord for creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. Even though he accepts, referring to Lord Vishnu, the quality of goodness of the material world, he is still transcendental to all the material modes. The following example will clear that matter more explicitly. In the prison house, there are the prisoners and the managers of the prison house. Both the managers and the prisoners are bound by the laws of the king. But even though the king sometimes comes in the prison, he is not bound by the laws of the prison house. The king is therefore always transcendental to the laws of the prison house, as the Lord is always transcendental to the laws of the material world. So we'll stop here. And from next week, we will cover verses 30 to 35, 34, which are an answer to the fourth question that was asked by the sages, to describe the pastimes of the Lord in conjunction with the material world. And then from chapter 3 onwards, in chapter 3, you have the answers to questions 5 and 6, where they wanted to hear Avatara Leela Katha. They wanted to hear the description of Krishna's avatars. And the sixth question was, after Krishna left this world, where have the principles of religion taken shelter? So these two questions are answered in chapter 6. Most of chapter 6 is dedicated to the fifth question, as most of chapter 2 was dedicated to questions 1 through to 3. And then towards the end of chapter 3, the last verse, if I'm not wrong, question number 6 is answered. I will share with the Vaishnavas the 2 questions that are there in the open book assessment. These, and I'll just verbally state them now. The first question is describe and explain the first 3 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's a detailed description, phrase by phrase. So the idea would be describe the overarching principle being described, and then to describe each of the phrases and their meaning. So that's for the first 3 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. The second question will be describe the 6 questions of the sages at Naimisharanya and explain in detail the answers provided by Sutta Goswami to these 3 questions, to these 6 questions. So these will be the questions.
Prabhuji, tell me the first question again. Sorry, first question again.
Describe in detail the overarching principle and include a phrase by phrase explanation of the first 3 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay.
And the second question.
Okay, I got it. So thank you.
Just repeat the second question in case anyone else needs to write it down. But the second question will be explain the first 3 questions, sorry, the 6 questions of the sages at Naimisharanya, and provide a summary flow of the answer provided by Sutta Goswami. So what this would mean is if there is, like, for example, question number 4 has, sorry, the first 3 questions have been answered in verses, you can almost say,
1.26 and 7.
From 6 onwards to 29 of the 2nd chapter. So I'm not asking for like a verse by verse summary, but what I would be saying is present the ideas there. So if there are a group of verses, like for example, there are 7 verses going from text number.
This is the open book, correct?
No, this is closed book. Did I say open book?
Yeah.
No, just asking.
Okay. So the open book question.
Open book. Yeah.
The open book question will be common to the entire canto of Bhagavatam. That will not be module by module.
Okay, okay, makes sense. Okay, okay, cool.
So
see, the thing is here, we got to keep remember if you are first question is okay, the first 3 was only, and the 6 questions we got to refer the answer is to verse number you got to remember.
Not saying the verse number, and please bear in mind that, I mean, these are the only 2 questions that will be asked. The devotees can write out the answer if they need to, and I will be writing out my own answers and sharing it with the devotees. That's the other thing I promised. The third thing is that devotees can bring a cheat sheet with them, with the answers written out. And test, if they want to, they can refer to their cheat sheet. So if they really want to, you can write out your entire answer and copy it down again. Because the idea is, I personally don't care about whether devotees memorize the information or not. For me, it is much more that the ideas and principles are understood. And if preparing the answer, writing it out in the cheat sheet and then copying it out again helps devotees internalize the answer, then that's the best way to do things.
When is the exam, Prabhu?
I will let you know. It should be, I think, 3 weeks of 3 weeks. It'll take us to cover chapter 3, I think. And once we complete chapter 3, we'll have a week's break.
Okay.
And then we'll have the exam the week after that.
Sometimes in November, mid-November.
After Kartik month or?
Yeah, it should
after
be.
Kartik.
So Prabhu, how elaborately is it recommended to write the answers?
As much information as it takes to explain the point. but usually precision is preferable to detail. Like, I mean, sorry, I don't mean to say to cut off detail, but the answer should be precise and to the point. Because one's understanding is conveyed by precision rather than by length. So even if it's a simple paragraph, it could be in bullet points. It doesn't matter if it's grammatically constructed sentences or not. It could be, in brief phrases, but as long as the foundational idea is conveyed, that is sufficient. So in Sutta Goswami's answer to the first three questions, it's a very elaborate evolution, the answer, where he describes what that essential dharma is. And then he provides, he explains why anything else cannot be considered a dharma. For instance, he explains why worshipping Krishna alone has to be the object. He explains as part of this the process of becoming elevated in this foundational dharma of developing a taste for chanting Krishna's names. So if you were writing an answer to this question, the answer would be that the sara, this essence of all the scriptures, is to develop a taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna. And in Sutta Goswami's answer, he provides three things. One, he explains that this is the ultimate essence of all religion, and he explains how everything else is supportive of, secondary to, or external to this foundational religious principle. That's the first overarching point. The second point is that he explains how this taste for hearing and chanting expands from its most foundational form up to the stage of prema bhakti, where one can't live without hearing and chanting about Krishna. And this is the process of advancement in devotional service. And then the third one is that the focus of all worship, of all of this hearing and chanting, is Krishna himself. And that is substantiated by explaining that Krishna alone sits above the modes of material nature. It is substantiated by historical precedent and any other arguments that are used. So this is an overarching principle. And so under this, you might quote, you might have, one sentence to expand these points. So you might say, with respect to the process of devotional service, Sutta Goswami explains, starting from, you might explain the 14 steps that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur speaks of, or you might summarize it by explaining how, by association, by chance service to a devotee, one associates with a spiritual master, one develops the desire to hear, one develops faith, one develops a desire to hear, and etc. And you might describe this, including, if you want, verse references or phrases of the verse, but that foundational idea should be there. And in this answer that I've given, it is clearly a synthesized answer. It focuses on the themes first before it goes into details. The opposite example of this is if Vaishnava summarizes every single verse and presents it without presenting an analysis of the answer. So I don't want a summary of the verses. I want a very clear understanding, almost an analysis, a synthesis of the message, and that thought through response is what I would like to see in the paper. Sorry, I'm using terms like I would like to see and things like that. Please forgive me, but that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, just one more question regarding the verses to remember thing. Is it going to happen along the same time? And
yes.
And how would we be doing it? Would we be coming to the temple for that, or is it going to be online? Or
no? What I will do is that I think there are approximately 31. I don't know how many devotees yet, but that's another thing I want to say. For those devotees, there are some who are present for listening, and there are some who are studying for the certificate. In that spreadsheet that Yuvati had shared, and I'll just reshare it in the group, can you please indicate whether you're studying for the certificate or you are just giving us your association? And for those who are studying in the certificate, I'm not sure yet how many devotees that comes to, but mostly what I will do is that I will personally test shlokas for 2 or 3 of those devotees and then request them to test everybody else. Otherwise, I think for me to test everybody, it would take too long. I think by the time I would get to all the Vaishnavas, it would be already like 2 or 3 weeks. But yes, it will be around the same time. What would mostly happen is that on the day that you're writing answers, I would have already tested the 2, 3, 4 devotees, depending on how many devotees there are. And then I'll allocate a group of devotees to each of these 3 or 4. And they will likely just get in touch with you either the day before the test, during the test, right after the test, something like that, according to mutual convenience. And the principles for the verse is, by the way, everybody's going to pass. Any attempt at the closed book slokas, that's an automatic pass. If necessary, I will fudge the marks to make sure you do pass. So please don't worry about that.
Yeah, very kind. Thank you.
The point associated with the verses is please try with the Sanskrit. I know it can be difficult, but please try with the Sanskrit and try and remember the translation. If you get the gist of the meaning of the verse and you're able to remember some of the Sanskrit phrases that accompany the verse, that for me is sufficient. I know it can be difficult. I know that time is always pressing, and my memory is certainly not what it used to be, but this much is sufficient to pass. If you're able to look at the verse and translations. So what are the verses? I think there was a file that was shared a while ago. So
Yes, Prabhu, there's a file which has Unit 1, Unit 2. So are we just looking at the Unit 1 verses?
That's correct. So I'm just opening this up. So for Unit 1, there are 3 verses there. 1.1.1. So that's Janmadi Asyata Nvyad. And then 1.1.2, which the beginning of the verse just skipped my mind. But yes, Dharma Projita Kaita Votara Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam. 1.3.28, which is
sorry.
Huh?
Could you repeat that? The third one?
1.3.28. So 1.1.1, 1.1.2, 1.3.28.
Thank you, Prabhu.
I already shared a document on that.
Yes, Prabhuji, you did. You shared.
Prabhu, these 3 are mandatory, right?
Yeah, these are the only verses that will be examined.
Okay.
Of course,
Only 3
honestly,
verses.
only 3 verses. Honestly speaking, in terms of the first 3 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, particularly chapter 2, there are a whole selection of verses that are worth memorizing. All the verses commencing from text number 6. For those who are keen to memorize it, in those days when I was studying at Vidyapit, they had us memorize everything. But from text number 6 through to text number 21. All of those verses are in many for many senior Vaishnavas who preach very regularly. They know all of these verses by heart, and they quote them regularly in classes. And in chapter 1, verses 1, 2, 3, then I think verse number 10, and then the Vayam Tuna Vitrapyama, text number 19. Those 3, 4, 5 verses, you generally find that preachers have memorized this on the tips of their tongue. And then in chapter 3, the main verse to memorize is Ete Chamsa Kalapamsa, and also Krishna Dhamma Upagates Asmin, where religious principles take shelter. So those two verses.
Which verses are they? 3 point what?
Well, 1.3.28 is Ete Chamsa Kalapamsa.
Yeah.
And then Krishna Swa Dhamma Upagate
Which one is that?
Saha is 1.3.43. So for devotees who love to memorize verses, these are the verses that you find that Vaishnavas who preach regularly, they have in their arsenal or on the tip of their tongues.
We can also
Wha-
this 1.2, 28 to 29, Vasudeva, that one also, right?
Yeah. Yes.
126 also, Prabhu.
Yes.
1 to 6 are included.
Okay.
Yes. So I think
Prabhu, is the English translation also required or just the sloka?
they're both necessary.
Yeah.
I would recommend. See, in memorizing the verse, it is more important to connect the translation with the phrases of the
phrases, yeah.
Sanskrit, because then there's a deeper understanding of what the verse means. So in that sense, even if the translation is not 100% perfect, but it accurately pinpoints the meaning of the verse, connecting to the phrases of the Sanskrit, while sticking to the overall structure that Srila Prabhupada has given, that is sufficient.
Yeah.
So a little bit of leeway is there with the translation. With the Sanskrit, the whole verse, if possible, or as close to it as possible.
Prabhu, can we have a revision of whatever the questions you have given? Just going through those.
Like going through the answers?
Yeah, just
I will write out my answers and share it with all the devotees. And if there are any questions on the basis of what I've written, we can always talk it through. I would prefer not to spend a class going through the questions and answers, because I think we've already 1 to 3, because it's very content heavy and it has many of Srila Prabhupada's most often quoted purports. I think we've spent a considerable amount of time, and I'd really like to be able to go ahead, keeping in mind the overall time frame that we're working to. But I will certainly write out my answers and I will share it with you. If that is insufficient, then we can always talk about it offline.
Prabhuji, if you want to save your time, I can send you the draft answer. I have the answer ready for that, those 2 questions.
Okay.
If you want, I can send it to you.
That's
Because
it.
I already, you can, no need to spend more time, just you can correct and send it.
Sure.
Okay, I already finished these 2 questions. Already I have the answer.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Please don't tell me that you're writing out the answers as we were speaking.
No. I finished already. I attended 3 classes, but these 2 questions are repeatedly asked by all the teachers, and I have the summarized those 2. What are the 5 questions they given? The first 2 questions is whatever you said. The same question I also have I have elaborately discussed. I'll send it to you.
Okay. Now, in terms of the open book questions for Canto 1, remember that this is across the entire canto, so it is not due at the end of Module 1, but it's 2 questions. It is draw out the first question, and I will write all of this out and send it. Draw out all the proofs that Srimad Bhagvatam is the supreme praman, or the supreme scripture. So that's the first open book question. The second open book question draw out all references made in the first canto, establishing the supreme position of pure devotional service.
Slow down, slow down. Draw out all references made out in Canto 1.
So draw out all references and thematically present, I should say. So it's not just a listing of all these references, but collect it under themes and present it. So there might be one theme that says pure devotional service is considered anywhere where pure devotional service headed by hearing and chanting about Krishna is heard. This is considered to be the supreme tirtha. So there may be 2-3 references in the first canto Bhagavatam that describe this. So bring it under one heading, just quote the verse numbers or the phrases of the verse that illustrate this. That's the idea. So draw out and thematically present, number one, all the proofs in the first canto of Bhagavatam that establish Srimad Bhagavatam as being the ultimate praman, or the supreme, the purest praman. Number two, draw out and thematically present all references presenting the supremacy of pure devotional service above every pure devotional service, particularly the process of hearing and chanting, above every other process. That's the second question. Because these are the two themes that run throughout the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam.
So that will happen when we finish the first canto.
Correct. What I would recommend is that as we read, you collect these references. And then when it comes to the end, it becomes easy to summarize it and present it.
Prabhu, on the second question, the other processes mean jnana and karma, or the other devotional process?
Principally karma and jnana, but also if the verses highlight the importance of hearing and chanting, that can also be pulled in.
You wanted, to emphasize on hearing and chanting. There are other processes like Archana, Vandanam, and all other processes also are there, or?
Correct, but typically in the first canto, the process of hearing and chanting is glorified.
Yeah.
You will not find as many descriptions. I'm not sure of other direct references to the other processes of devotional service, but certainly you will find many references to hearing and chanting in particular. So I meant more pure devotional service as a general idea, but pure devotional service characterized by hearing and chanting. Because the character of pure devotional service is that it always commences with, it's always permeated with the hearing and chanting of Krishna. Yeah, I'll write it out in a Word document and I will send through these questions. So the intention almost behind the open book questions and the closed book questions. For the closed book questions, the idea is to come very close to the text itself and to deeply understand the flow of verses. So in later modules, there will be questions like, summarize the flow of instructions given by Narada to Vyasa, or summarize Vyasadev's and summarize and highlight the most important points of Vyasadeva's Samadhi darshan of Krishna. So it'll be questions like this that come very close to the text itself. The open book questions are more focused on analyzing themes across the entire canto and collecting references, collecting ideas, collecting verses across the whole of the canto and bringing it together. And this is based on an understanding that whilst the 10 topics of Bhagavatam are covered across the each of the 12 cantos, nonetheless, each of the cantos do tend to focus on a specific specifically on one of the 10 topics. So when we come to the 6th canto Bhagavatam, for example, the open book question will be, draw out and thematically present all the 6th canto's presentation of Poshana, or Krishna's protection of the devotees. It'll be questions like that. When we come to the 7th canto, the question will be, well, that's outside of Bhakti Vaibhav, but if we were talking about the 7th canto, the question would be, draw out all of the Bhagavatam's references to Udaya, or psychological impressions, of either a pure devotee like Prahlad or other mixed modes of material nature. So that would be the kind of question that we have in open book. The other kind of question that I will include later on, I haven't done it yet, will be summarize the salient points from Srila Prabhupada's purports to XYZ verse. So when we come to teachings of Queen Kunti, for example, the questions might be, summarize Kunti Maharani's prayers to Krishna. So that'd be the first question. The second question would be, summarize the salient points from Srila Prabhupada's purports to Janmaishware Shruta Shripir, or Gopiyada Dekvai Kritagasi Namatavad, or etc. Other select verses where Srila Prabhupada's purports are particularly often quoted or very dear to the Vaishnava community. Or at least from my limited condition point of view, those are the purports that particularly stand out to me as having important instructions, although every one of these purports have important instructions. I'll stop the recording here.